How are you? Welcome back. Today's the day, the mowers are on and we start the harvest process for this crop of forage rye that I introduced you to a few weeks ago. Let's get into it. With the last Sunday in April and it's absolutely perfect conditions, 20 degrees here today, and also the crop's at the perfect stage as well. You'll be able to see around me that the ears are just starting to show. This crop is on me getting up towards chest height, if not averaging at least waist height throughout the crop. What I would say is overall, from the winter and the weather that we had last year starting to play out and give a legacy to a lot of these crops, possibly just a little bit thinner than we're due to expect at normally this time of the year, but overall still a brilliant crop that's given us that overwinter cover and now also forage production for this spring. Now, even though quite a lot of the forage rye crops are that little bit thinner due to losing a few tillers over the winter from the conditions that we've had, because we added the vetch into this mixture, it's meant that they've been able to get away really well. They're really tall as well. They're probably getting up to waist height. I probably won't think that they're going to replace that level of yield, but it'd be really interesting to see what amount of protein that they can potentially add to the forage rye as an option going forward. As I say, with the last Sunday in April down here in Cheshire, it's 20 degrees, incredibly favourable conditions. And again, going back to that point of some of you that are concerned about putting these crops in that then delay your overall maize establishment, think back to the conditions that we're in now. Maize has only just really started to be drilled over the last few days. These crops will be harvested and taken in the next 2 to 3 days, worked over, maize gone back in again. We're not really delaying ourselves massively for the opportunity of having this behind us. Now, considering these crops are just that little bit thinner, and also the really high temperatures we're due to receive the next couple of days, anything up to 25 degrees, we're actually going to miss out the tedding fraction in this scenario where I am today. We're just going to leave them in the swath, row them back up, and then pick them up with the forage box in the next couple of days. High dry matter should still be achievable with the conditions that we've got coming. Now, I know I've mentioned them already a couple of times today, but I'm back on these vetches again. They're really clear to see in the swath. It's going to be really interesting for me to see what they do in terms of that level of protein. Like I say, I don't think they're going to add massive levels of overall yield, but that extra bit of diversity, and definitely when you see them in the swaths, when sometimes you can add extra little bits and pieces to spice some of these options up, and they disappear pretty well before the mower's already in. But this is great to see and holding, good bit of promise for what they could possibly add in an overall crop. When it comes to mowing forage rye, as I say, the only thing to bear in mind from the previous crop is stones, but hopefully we've been forward thinking and we've thought about the process of mowing this crop, and therefore they're well out of the way. Therefore, you can take as much of this forage rye as you possibly can. Because we're cutting it green, because it is an overall living crop still as we're taking it, and real good forage all the way to the bottom, we don't have to worry about the overall dead stems or woody matter that we want to leave behind. You can take as much of this crop as you want, and you will get the overall quality from head to toe. I've got my 3 young apprentices out with me today. Interesting comments just come. What did you just say then, Barnaby?
It's spitting up water.
Yeah, it feels like it's spitting up water as you walk across the stubbles. It goes back to that point about forage rye being in that incredible pump for water. It's pulling so much moisture out of the crop and out of the ground, so it will actually flick you in the face as you walk across. But overall can really improve ground conditions, especially on the more marginal ground ahead of maize. Following on from that first video that I did, I actually had an interesting conversation last week with regards to a grower up in the northeast who's interested in utilising forage rye now within their rotation. However, the conversation led a little bit of a different way. They're looking for a feed that's actually suitable for young stock and dry cows, looking for that little less energy, but actually that higher bit of roughage. My advice to them would be, because there was a concern around timings, around their first cut, is actually leave your forage rye then. Don't take it so soon at the end of April, beginning of May. Push it back that little bit into May when it is that you're going to be doing first cuts. The crop will have done its significant stem extension. Overall quality will have just eased back a little bit, and that overall fibre within the ration will be a lot higher. So again, given that level of flexibility, so whether it's that you are wanting to produce high quality forage for the milking ration, or specifically something for young stock and dry cows, Forage Rye can offer you that. Now, you remember from my first video, I was very open and honest, and I said that I wouldn't just be focusing on all the good stuff, but we'd also look at the more challenging situations together and learn from those. This crop of Forage Rye, as you can see behind me, is a little bit patchy, but it was established in brilliant circumstances. The drill was actually in the same field as the forager when we were harvesting the maize here. But the following night, this crop received 50 mil of rain. As I've said to you also previously, Forage Rye is good, but it's not a silver bullet. However, at least doing something to try and mitigate that overall environmental impact in the winter and also give you a chance to forage in the spring is always better than doing nothing. Yes, it has met its limits in this field. It's only really survived where it's managed to keep its head above the water. However, we've still managed to attain that overall environmental benefit and also forage from where it has established. You can only do what you can do. Now, just into the new year, there was plenty of conversations about this crop as to whether or not it was viable to continue on to forage for the end of April. But as you can see, yes, it hasn't come in certain areas, but overall where it has come, it's produced a really good crop. It's even actually surprised me at just how well it has managed to battle on and what it has managed to produce in these regions of the field where it has managed to keep its head above the water and get going. So just as the crop that we've seen down the road, this is being mown today, left to wilt for the next 48 hours. And within farming, I think it's fair to say that we all like to see full crops, hedge to hedge, fence to fence, but ultimately it doesn't always happen like that. If it is that you have these parts of the fields that haven't established very well, I know it's going to be a bit of a headache, but doing something is always going to be better than doing nothing. And ultimately you can only do your best. Now again, in this crop, the vetch has been established too, but just look how it's managed to get hold in here. Especially with that lower concentration of rye that possibly hasn't been able to survive. I'm really impressed with what this vetch has done. Drilling a legume into October, overwintering in very tough conditions. Shouldn't really be doing this, but it's food for thought and things for us to learn. Right, let's see if some of this vetch has started setting a few nodules. Get digging. So not only will the vetch potentially add a little bit more protein to the mix, but because it is a legume, there's the chance that it will also fix nitrogen. We can see them already, those nodules on the root system. So not only keeping soil alive, but also adding fertility over the winter. Now, who doesn't love a happy little accident? The more time that I spend in this crop, seeing where the vetch is really established, where that rye's been thinner, it's doing something that even I didn't expect it to do. It was drilled in the middle of October. It was given the winter that we've just had, and it's a legume. We all know that establishing clovers, even within grass mixtures much after the middle of September, is risky. But the way that this vetch is established is really impressive. Could this be another option? Could we be looking at another not only protein but also nitrogen fixing option over the winter? It will be really key to see how this provides in terms of analysis. But again, more food for thought and something to come out of a situation that ultimately we did think could have been a bit of a disaster. So there we are, first harvest process for this crop of Forage Rye complete. It's now been mown just like grass. Yes, it is technically a cereal, as I said on my previous video, but we are managing Forage Rye crops just like grass. This will now be left to wilt for the next 48 hours before being rown up and brought back into the clamp. However, if it works for you, you could also bale it. We're 48 hours on now, and today is the day. These crops of Forage Rye are now being harvested. So let's look at the process of getting these crops in the clamp. Now I want to take a sample of where these vetch is a bit thicker to see if we can get some sort of an idea as to what they're adding. I don't have a bag, so sandwiches are going to have to take a back seat, and that'll give us a pop. That'll do. Now it's not going to be overly scientific, but where we have this higher population of vetch, I want to try and sample this to see what it does. So I need to try and get some of this from that trailer on this round. Hopefully it'll be at the back of the trailer, or sorry, at the front of the trailer, therefore at the back of the load, so I can sample it in the clamp. That's if I can get back to the clamp before he does. Now if I've got this right, the high vetch stuff that I'm after should now be at the front. Ta-da! There, that'll do. It's airtight as well. Right. Bob this forage sample in the fridge. Dylan Pinker, ARN, will pick that up a little bit later on this afternoon. We'll see what it does. Whilst we're busy away down here in Cheshire, just bringing the last of the Forage Rye Crops in down here, East Logan are busy away with the Yates family from my previous video. They're already mowing their crops as well. Let's have a look at how they're getting on. Some really good looking crops, aren't they? And giving that ideal winter cover and now forage heading into the new year. That ground again will be turned back into maize, and I'll bring you along with me again to see how the Yates family at East Logan do get on with maize in their second year, north of the border, but grown out in the open. Right, so you've seen this morning that so far this forage crop has been picked up with a couple of forage boxes. So I've just taken the time, he's a busy man. We just jumped on with Jack Halton of Jack Ag Services, contracted services, yeah?
Yeah, it says yeah.
So, right then Jack, tell us who you are, what you're about and what we're up to today.
So I'm Jack, one-man band agricultural contracting services. We specialise in a lot of forage wagoning.
Yeah.
This is probably now my 4th year full-time into it.
Yeah.
I'm on my 4th forage wagon.
Right.
Swapped and changed about a bit. Started with a small one and it didn't last very long. Like, soon outgrew how much we were doing.
Yeah.
And it sort of spiralled from there. I've got a good customer base now. Probably I'll travel. Probably this is as far as I'll go, Nantwich.
Right, so where's home for you?
Congleton.
Okay,
Based in Congleton. And yeah, it's sort of just gone boom really, because the forage wagon job, it's quite flexible. People like it because it's so relaxed.
And they are becoming more popular, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And as the wagons have come on, they've got a lot more shorter chop.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more consistent.
Yeah. So the quality that they're getting out of it at the other end is higher.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then they're getting it more compact in the clamps, which I think was a massive concern when the first sort of forage wagons were running about doing a bit.
Just because they didn't have that consistency of chop length, and therefore
you're
consolidation
was got a lot more air in it.
Yeah.
And like I've sort of trained my customers now that they don't want this long bloody elephant grass. It's ankle height. You know.
Well, again, it's tying in with the multi-cut sort of type scenarios, isn't it? And that higher quality over quantity scenario.
It is, yeah. So now most of my customers are on 5 or 6 cuts a year.
Yeah.
Which suits me because I'm getting around farms quicker, so it's not taking as long to do each cut.
Yeah.
And you're keeping everybody happy.
And it's just that flexibility, I guess, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And like you say, I mean, you know, going back to those traditional, should we say, more traditional sort of forage boxes, forage wagons, like you say, I mean, to me, they just look like a bit of a greenhouse frame on a trailer body with a few bits of corrugated tin wrapped around.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've obviously seen already today, you've this big smart Strout one behind us.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the new bit of kit.
This is fresh this year, supplied from Cornflakes.
Right, okay.
Nantwich.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a jump from the last machine, money-wise.
Right. So what was the previous machine?
So the previous one was a Pottinger Jumbo 7400.
Okay, yeah.
Which was a good machine. It didn't do me any harm.
Yeah.
But I like to keep things fresh so that I keep the reliability for the customers.
Got you. Yeah, yeah.
Going back to being like a one-man band, if I break down, the whole job stops.
Yeah.
So I've got to keep things rolling.
You need that reliability.
Yeah, which costs me a bit more money, but at the end of the day, you're providing a good service, and that's
there is the investment, isn't it, in terms of what you can get out of it. And
that's what it's about, yeah.
So, talk me through this new bit of kit then. What's going to be the biggest attributes that you think that are...
So she's on the rubber flex tine pickup tines.
Right, okay, yeah.
Which is grand for this sort of terrain where you know it's not perhaps been rolled or...
Especially where like crop's been direct drilled and things like that,
They don't create the energy like a metal spring tine would.
Right,
so it's not flicking the soil out on the stones.
Yeah, it's just a bit more forgiving.
Yeah, and it's better for me because it's one bolt to change. I haven't got to take any pickup bands off or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good all round really.
Oh, good. Still got the ability to put additive through this machine?
Yeah, so the machine has got it's an old wagon fuel tank underneath the back of it.
Right.
Holds 400 litres. And then it's like a homemade system that I've adapted onto it.
Perfect.
With a flow meter and then 3 spray nozzles across the rotor.
Right, yeah. No, I saw it parked up just earlier on, just while she was having a bit of a tinker with it, and it looks a really, really simple yet effective way of ensuring that the additive can be applied. Yeah.
Got a flow meter at the front, so you can always see that it's going on.
Yeah.
Because people, these farmers, they're spending a lot of money on the additive, and there's too many horror stories that you hear that the additive's not going on. I don't like that idea.
No, and look, within my job, looking at that level of attention to detail and getting the most out of these crops, like you say, silage additives playing a big key part, especially in terms of mitigating some of that margin of error, which even if it's just down to the weather we've had last 2 years, there's plenty of that been going on, hasn't there?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think for the small cost that it is, it's well worth putting on.
Yeah. When it comes to selecting additives to use on the likes of Forage Rye harvested in the spring, just keep it simple. I know I've said it many times now that we're thinking this crop more like grass than we are cereals. Therefore, we're managing it in just the same way as grass. Overall, just your standard grass silage additive is perfectly fine and does a really good job. So what sort of capacity do you think this new Stroutman will give you then in terms of...
Tonnage wise, probably not in this sort of crop, but in grass you get up to 24 tonne in, in the machine.
So it's capable of putting a fair bit in then. It's not a little bit of kit, is it?
Yeah, and it's on some big 800 tyres, so it travels well.
Yeah, so again, keeping them levels of compaction down.
Yeah.
Is this the first job out with it?
It is, yeah. She was brand new this morning, but it's not now.
If they need to find you, where do you normally, are you on Facebook, stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah,
just looking at building a website now, but anyway, it's a bit above my pay grade, that is.
Right, so what do they need to search for if they're looking for you on Facebook and Instagram?
Just search for Jack AG Services.
Perfect.
Try and put as much on there as I can.
Around the Cheshire area. Perfect. Yeah. Right, well, it's definitely doing a good job, and it's making light work of this Forage Rye anyway, mate. So, wishing you all the best for the rest of the season, eh?
Yeah, no, cheers.
So there we have it. Hey mate, how you doing? Good, you? Good. Yeah, I'll come and have a look now. Perfect. Everything looking alright? Great. Okay, I'll head over now, mate. Okay, cheers. Bye. Should we go and have a look at another? Now, I've just pulled up in a little bit of shade just whilst we wait for the contractor to arrive. It's been really hot these last few days, isn't it? But it is just starting to ease now. Again, another part of my role that I really value is following these crops all the way up to the harvest period and ensuring that technical input and advice, especially for growers who are growing a crop for the first time and especially new customers, have that input all the way to the clamp or bales. It's that time of the year that's exciting. It's what we've always worked towards in terms of maximising the output of these crops. Even as a child, I said in my first video, I didn't have a farm at home, but me and my friends would phone each other when we'd hear choppers going in the distance and we'd get on our bikes and go chopper chasing. It's that same feeling even in my role now. It's exciting. It's that accomplishment of harvest at the other end. I'm really fortunate that customers, even though it can be quite stressful at harvest time, do include me into that harvest process and have my advice all the way through and be part of that process that ultimately is what we're all working towards at the end. Some cracking crops of forage rye where I am today. These again established in between maize crops and for the first time by this grower. Again, tale of two halves in terms of establishment. The field that I'm in now was one of those fields that was established just after maize was harvested, but received that significant level of rainfall shortly after it being drilled. So it has held the crop back a little bit, and it isn't necessarily just quite as big as we would expect it to do, but still a tremendous crop to have that's given us that overwinter cover. However, the field we're going to have a look at next was established only a couple of weeks later, once that rain had passed and the conditions had really favoured, and actually ground conditions had favoured. And it's even bigger again. That's a really cracking crop to have a look at. So let's have a look at this one, and we're going to have a look at the one down the road. Up until now, the forage rye crops that we looked at together have all been destined for dairy rations. Where I am today is a really top-end beef finishing unit. Again, utilising maize for that high quality of starch, but now incorporating the likes of forage rye in between those maize crops to give that overall winter cover, but also additional forage that is going to be utilised within the beef ration. It's not very often that the later drilled crops end up being the better ones, is it? But this is the case in this situation. We missed that rain, conditions favoured, and this crop got off to a much better start. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and if only we knew that drilling later last season was the best outcome for these crops to perform over the winter. But here we are. It's not the biggest in fields, but it's by far, probably I would say, the best crop that I've seen this year. So now there we have it, forage rye and its harvest complete for another year. I brought you with me ever since that first video where we just discussed forage rye as a concept and a principle to have between our maize crops. Hopefully you found these videos useful in terms of painting that picture as to how it could potentially work for you. Overall, we have had a very challenging winter yet again, but these crops have done the job. They've ticked those two boxes that we're initially looking to achieve. The first being the environmental. They've given us that winter cover. They've kept the soils where we want them to be. They've kept them alive. And then they've also produced forage into the spring. All right, overall yields haven't necessarily been vintage, but if these current conditions continue and we have a dry year, the forage that we manage to produce off of these crops will become very valuable by the time we get to July. Ever since I actually started putting these harvest videos together and harvests has started taking place with first cuts and also forage rye around the UK, there's been quite a few questions and activity online, and I can see that there is still questions out there. So hopefully these videos have been useful to really work out what forage rye is. Is it ryegrass? Is it hybrid rye? Is it forage rye? You now know the answer. Going forward, we now go again. These ground will now be mucked, worked over and going back into maize again. Hopefully to produce a better crop of forage for the coming season than we've seen for the last two. But overall, I do hope you've enjoyed these videos. If you have, please like, share, subscribe and click that little bell, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.